My son told me not to show up at his wedding. But 2 hours later, the same family he chose over me was begging for my help. My name is Maria Harris, and for century years, I believed there was nothing stronger than the bond between a mother and her only child. I raised my son Michael in a tiny apartment over my sewing shop, stitching clothes during the day and stitching our lives together at night. I wasn't wealthy. I wasn't educated in fancy schools. But I gave that boy every ounce of strength I had. Every birthday cake, every science project, every late-night fever. My hands were always there. And for most of his life, he made me feel important, cherished, needed, until he met Emily Carter. Emily was warm, polite, soft-spoken, but her family, especially her aunt, Victoria Carter, walked into Michael's life like they owned not just him, but the future he was supposed to build. Victoria came from old money, the kind of money that didn't need to be spoken, about, because it lived in every corner of her voice. The first time I met her, she shook my hand the way people test the quality of fabric, measuring, judging, deciding, count. From that day on, things changed. Michael's Sunday visits turned into bi-weekly check-ins, then monthly excuses. Victoria. P4. Mom, Emily's family planned dinner. Mom, Victoria needs us to go over wedding details. Mom, I'll come by next week. But next week rarely came. I told myself it was normal. Sons grow up. Sons get busy. Sons fall in love, but this wasn't just distance. This was replacement. 2 months before the wedding, Emily invited me to her bridal dress fitting. I arrived hopeful. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe they wanted me included. Instead, I spent 2 hours in a boutique where I felt like a piece of outdated furniture, present, but unnecessary. Victoria talked over everyone, correcting everything from the lighting to the lace, never once asking me what I thought. And when Emily finally stepped out in her chosen gown, glowing like a girl in a fairy tale, Victoria gently touched Michael's shoulder and whispered, thinking I couldn't hear Ito, "She doesn't fit our world." Ooh. She being me. For the first time, Michael didn't defend me. He didn't correct her. He didn't even flinch. I left that boutique with a smile that cracked the moment I reached the parking lot. I sat in my car, staring at the steering wheel through watery eyes, asking myself a question no mother should ever ask. No. When did my child stop seeing me as his family? I didn't know then. But the answer would arrive in the most brutal way, one sentence that would break my heart completely. Mom, don't come to my wedding. I stared at my phone, reading my son's message over and over again. Mom, don't come to my wedding. As if repeating it might somehow change the words, I tried calling him once, twice, 7 times. Every attempt sent me straight to voicemail. By the 8th call, I wasn't even angry. I was terrified. Terrified of how easily he had cut me out, terrified of what, or who, had convinced him to do it. The next day, I swallowed my pride and drove to Emily's family home. The Carters lived in a gated neighborhood where houses didn't have mailboxes. They had names. Their driveway alone was longer than my entire block. Emily opened the door with a startled expression. "Maria? You should have texted. I need to speak to Michael," I said, keeping my voice steady. Before she could answer, Victoria appeared behind her like a shadow that had learned to smile. "Get Maria, this is not a good time," she said smoothly. "Wedding week is delicate." I want to hear from my son," I insisted. Yuck. Victoria tilted her head, wearing the kind of gentle smirk people use when they think they're smarter than you. Michael is resting. He doesn't need stress right now, stress. That was her word for me. Did you tell him to uninvite me? I asked directly. Emily's eyes widened. Victoria's didn't budge. "Yay," I advised him. Victoria said calmly that weddings are emotional events, and sometimes old bonds hold back new beginnings. Old bonds. 31 years of sacrifice reduced to a category she could sweep aside like dust. Emily tried to speak. Aunt Victoria, maybe. Enough, Emily, she snapped. What frightened me wasn't Victoria's control. It was how naturally Michael seemed to obey it. I left without another word. My pride wouldn't let me beg on a stranger's doorstep. Not when I had built my entire life on my knees for that boy. But inside something had cracked, something quiet, something dangerous. 3 days before the wedding, Michael finally called. Mom? His voice was stiff, rehearsed. Look, we just want things simple. It's better if you don't come, I asked a long pause. Then Kiddo, Emily's family thinks. It's for the best? There it was, the truth. Not his voice, not his decision, Michael, I whispered. When did you stop making choices for yourself? He inhaled sharply. Don't make this harder, Mom, please. Harder? I had carried him through sickness, poverty, heartbreak, but respecting his wedding. That was too hard. When he hung up, I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't broken, but because betrayal this deep dries your tears before they reach your eyes. The night before his wedding, I laid out the dress I'd made to wear, the navy chiffon with pearl beading I'd sewn by hand. I folded it gently, placed it back in the closet, and told myself this was the price of letting a child grow up. But I had no idea. The real price hadn't even begun. The morning of Michael's wedding felt strangely silent. Like the city itself knew I wasn't supposed to be part of it. No guests for me to greet, no seat waiting for me, no corsage, no mother of the groom moment, nothing. I brewed coffee in my chipped mug and tried to convince myself I'd survived worse. But heartbreak has a way of making even breathing feel expensive. At shreea.m, my shop bell rang. I wasn't expecting customers. It was Saturday, and the whole neighborhood knew my son was getting married. Maybe someone was stopping by to give me a hug, a kind word, a reminder that I still mattered somewhere. But when I stepped outside, the street was empty. Only a small brown envelope lay on the mat. No name, he cast. No return address, only one word typed on the front. Maria. My stomach tightened. I brought it inside, locked the door, and sat at my sewing table. The same place I'd cried over broken zippers and overdue rent, and, recently, my son's voice telling me to stay away. I opened the envelope with a seam ripper. Inside were 8 photographs. At first, I didn't understand what I was seeing. Photo, Michael standing outside a restaurant, not with Emily, with Victoria photo, Victoria leaning close to him, whispering something. His smile, not the nervous one he wore around her. Something else. Something comfortable. Photo San. Michael holding the door open for her like he used to do for me. Before she took my place, Photo C, Victoria's hand on his arm. Too familiar. Too intimate. Too wrong. Photo Woo. Michael entering a condo building beside her, his hand on her back. Photo. Luke, a hotel lobby. And 2 key cards in Victoria's hand, Michael laughing. Photo. Chi, a rooftop bar. Victoria touching his tie, adjusting it as if she owned him. Photo. Bach, the one that made my breath stop. Victoria and Michael on a balcony at night. His arms around her waist, her head resting against his chest. I couldn't move, couldn't blink, couldn't breathe. My son, with his fiancée's aunt? No, that couldn't be real. The ground beneath me felt like fabric stretched too thin, ready to tear. I told myself maybe the angles were misleading. Maybe they were planning wedding details. Maybe, but the intimacy in those photos, I knew what closeness looked like. I had raised a child alone. I had known love and loss. I had known what betrayal felt like. Yet nothing prepared me for this. Just then my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number, Renault. If you want the truth, call this number before the ceremony ends. Cow. I stared at the message. The photo spread across my sewing table like evidence in a crime scene. Acopex. Somewhere in the distance, church bells rang. My son's wedding had started. For me. And I had just learned the one secret that could end it all. I didn't go to the wedding. I sat in my shop instead, surrounded by scissors, pins, and the photographs that had turned my world into a nightmare. My phone buzzed again. Same unknown number. Call before it's too late. And for a long moment I just stared at the screen. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from the kind of anger that sits behind your ribs and grows heavier with every heartbeat. I dialed the number. A man answered immediately. Mrs. Harris? Yes. Who is this? My name is Daniel Ward. I'm a private investigator, Why are you contacting me? Kay. He exhaled deeply, as if the weight of what he knew had been sitting on his chest for weeks. Because someone wanted you to know the truth before your son made the biggest mistake of his life. Okay. My voice shook. You sent the photos? Yes. And there's more. Much more. I swallowed. Tell me, Mrs. Harris. Michael and Victoria have been meeting privately for months. Expensive hotels, late-night dinners, unexplained cash withdrawals, hidden condos. I've confirmed all of it. My throat tightened. No, that isn't possible. No. Victoria is engaged in a relationship with your son, he finished. A secret one. The world tilted. The walls of my shop seemed to shift, as though fabric bolts were sliding from their shelves. Why would she do this? I whispered. Victoria isn't just controlling Mrs. Harris. She's desperate. Emily's trust fund becomes fully accessible after the wedding. And if things go wrong after the marriage... He paused. Michael would inherit more than you can imagine. I felt sick in a way I had never felt before. Echo. You're telling me my son is being used? I asked. Used, manipulated, groomed, Daniel said. Victoria knows exactly what she's doing. And Michael? I whispered. Why would he fall for this? And because she offered him the one thing he never had growing up, he said softly, power, wealth, a shortcut out of the life he came from. Kay. I dropped into my sewing chair, gripping the armrests as if they could hold me together. Mrs. Harris, Daniel continued gently. There's one more thing. I closed my eyes. Just say it. I have recordings, he said. Phone calls, meetings, conversations between Michael and Victoria. I didn't want to send them until I confirmed their authenticity. My heart pounded so loud I could barely hear him. What's on them? I asked. Discussions about the trust fund, about Emily, about the timeline of the marriage, Victoria, telling your son he needs to, you'll follow the plan. Plan? I echoed, horrified. Yes. And from what I've heard, that plan puts Emily in danger. I covered my mouth, fighting the rising nausea. Mrs. Harris, Daniel said quietly, you need to come hear these recordings. Before the wedding ends, before they leave the venue. I stood up slowly. My legs were trembling. My breath was unsteady. But something inside me hardened, a quiet steel I didn't know I still had. Send me the address, I said. A second later, my phone pinged. And with the photographs still scattered across my sewing table, I grabbed my keys, locked the shop door, and stepped into the sunlight, heading toward the truth that would destroy the wedding. And the son I thought I knew. The address Daniel sent led me to a quiet office suite above a hardware store. Nothing flashy, nothing suspicious. Just ordinary enough to hide something catastrophic. When I stepped inside, Daniel Ward stood up immediately. Early. Ursers. Calm eyes. A man who had seen too many truths and carried them like scars. Mrs. Harris, he said gently. Thank you for coming, just show me, I replied. Can't. I didn't have any strength left for pleasantries. He guided me to a small room with a computer and file folders stacked in neat misery. Photographs, statements, hotel receipts, and a USB drive that looked much too small to hold something so devastating. Daniel inserted it. Before I play these, he warned, you need to understand what you're about to hear will hurt. But it's the truth. I nodded. Once, he pressed play. Band's recording. Tani recording, pan recordis, panned recording. E. Two voices too close, Michael. Oh, what if Emily starts asking questions? Victoria, she won't. She believes whatever I tell her, Michael, but the trust, it activates after the wedding, right? Victoria, exactly. And once things shift, you'll have everything you were promised, my heart stopped shift? What did that mean? Bam recording, R. A whisper that felt like poison. Michael? I'm nervous, Victoria. Tyne subitordis. Spershimel. Nervous? Victoria? That's why you have me. I'll take care of everything, Michael. But I don't want anything bad to happen to her. Yo, Victoria, lowering her voice. Eo. Accidents happen, sweetheart. People grieve. They move on. And then we'll finally have the life you deserve. I covered my mouth with both hands. Yo, a cold, sharp panic spread through my chest. They weren't just having an affair. They were planning something far worse. Ponder recording. Setwas intimatial. Ponder recording. Recording. Sen. The one that broke me. Broke me. Michael. My mom is suspicious. Victoria. Your mother is sentimental. Weak. You can't, Michael. Don't talk about her like that, Victoria. Then keep her away. Send her a message. Tell her she's not invited. She'll obey. Women like her always do, Michael, after a long pause. He? Fine. I'll tell her. That was when Daniel paused the audio. Icarus. I sat frozen, anger and heartbreak twisting so tightly together I could barely breathe. Daniel spoke softly. Mrs. Harris, your son is not innocent, but he's not the mastermind. Victoria targeted him. She groomed him, manipulated him, used his insecurities and ambition. I whispered, my voice cracking. He always said he didn't want to end up like me. Daniel nodded sadly. And she promised him he wouldn't. I stared at the computer screen, at the frozen timestamp, at the proof that the boy I raised was crumbling under a pressure he couldn't handle. She made him choose, I murmured. She made him push me away. Yes, Daniel said. Yeah. But what happens next? That's something you can still change. How? I asked, barely above a whisper. Daniel leaned forward. The wedding ends in less than an hour. If you go now with this evidence, you can stop them. You can protect Emily. And maybe you can still save your son from himself. My hands shook as I gathered the files. I had been uninvited, unwanted, dismissed. But now I was the only person who could stop a tragedy. I stood up, take me to the venue. My voice was steady, cold, ready. Because the one thing stronger than betrayal is a mother who refuses to let darkness swallow her child. Daniel drove while I sat silent, gripping the folder of evidence so tightly the edges cut into my palms. The closer we got to the wedding venue, the louder my heartbeat became, pounding against the inside of my ribs like a warning. The church came into view first, white stone, stained glass, guests spilling out into the courtyard for photos. We were too late for the ceremony, but not too late to save someone's life. Are you ready? Daniel asked, parking a block away. No, I whispered honestly. But I'm going anyway. I can't. We walked quickly, keeping close to the crowd. My dress wasn't fancy, my hair wasn't styled, and I carried no invitation. But none of that mattered now. All I could think about was my son, my Michael. The one who used to fall asleep on my lap after nightmares. The one who used to say, Mom, I'll take care of you someday. How had he let himself fall this far? Inside the reception hall, the atmosphere buzzed with celebration. Soft jazz, clinking glasses, people laughing over their plates of salmon and champagne. If you didn't know the truth, you'd think it was a picture-perfect wedding. But beneath the glitter, something rotted. Daniel stayed by the entrance while I moved closer to the head table. I didn't need to make a scene yet. I needed to see the players first, and there they were. A plunble wud. Emily glowing in her lace gown, smiling and thanking guests. She looked radiant, innocent, heartbreakingly unaware. Michael, in a tailored suit, looked handsome but strained. His eyes darted around the room, his smile too tight. He was nervous, afraid, trapped, and then Victoria, her champagne-colored dress shimmered like she'd been spun from gold. Her smile was effortless, controlled. She touched Michael's shoulder with a familiarity that made my stomach twist. At that moment, Michael locked eyes with me. His entire face drained of color. He stood abruptly, knocking over his champagne flute. "Mom?" he whispered across the room, horrified. "Yes, Michael, I came anyway." Because a mother shows up, even when her child tells her not to. Victoria followed his gaze, and the moment she saw me, her expression cracked. Just a flicker, but enough. Her smile tightened, her eyes sharpened, and she rose from her chair like a queen preparing for war. "Yo." She approached me slowly, heels clicking like a countdown. "Maria," she breathed, voice sweetened with poison. "You weren't invited." "No was needed, no," I replied, "but I was needed." Her jaw twitched. "Leave now," she hissed softly, "before you embarrass yourself and your son any further." I didn't move. Okay? Because I wasn't the one about to be embarrassed. I lifted the folder. Her eyes widened. She knew. I knew. And in that split second, so did Michael. "Mom," he said, voice trembling. "What did you bring?" I opened my mouth, but before a single word left my lips, the ballroom doors burst open behind us. Emily's grandfather, Mr. Carter, stormed in with 3 lawyers and security at his back. The room fell silent. People turned, forks froze midair, even the music seemed to stop. He pointed straight at Victoria. "Wow, you," he thundered, "are done." And for the first time that day, Victoria looked afraid. The room froze as Mr. Carter's voice boomed across the ballroom. Guests stopped chewing, stopped whispering, stopped breathing. Victoria stood motionless, her perfect posture stiffening as her mask cracked. "Mr. Carter," she said with a tight smile, "this is highly inappropriate." "Inappropriate?" he snarled. "Stealing from your own niece is inappropriate. Manipulating this boy," he pointed at Michael, "is inappropriate. But planning what you planned, that is criminal." A ripple of shock spread through the crowd. Emily stepped forward, trembling. "Grandpa? What's happening?" Michael looked from her to me to Victoria, his whole world unraveling in real time. "Mr. Carter raised a folder, the same folder I carried, the same evidence Daniel had given me. "I received these files 20 minutes ago," he said, "and I have already spoken with the police." "Police." Yeah. The word slashed through the air like a blade. Victoria's composure vanished. She took a step back. Security took a step forward. "This is a misunderstanding," she tried, her voice shaking. Those photos are fake. Michael and I were discussing wedding plans." "Wedding plans, Mr.?" Carter barked. "At a hotel? At midnight? With his hands around your waist?" Guests gasped. Emily's hand flew to her mouth. Michael stumbled backward as if struck. "Victoria?" he whispered. "You told me, you said, none of this would ever come out." And there it was. The confession, Fescher. She never expected. The room exploded with murmurs. Emily turned to Michael, her voice breaking. "What is he talking about?" "What did you do?" Michael looked at her, tears burning at the edges of his eyes. I don't know anymore. I thought," Victoria said. "She said she loved me, that we'd all be safe if I just followed the plan." The plan?" Emily screamed. Victoria lunged toward him. "Don't say another word." But security intercepted her, gripping her arms. Michael's breath cracked. "She said the trust fund would come to me after we married. She told me Emily would be taken care of." Emily stumbled back in horror. "Taken care of?" "Michael, were you planning something?" "No," he cried. "No, Emily. I swear, I didn't want you hurt." I didn't want any of this. She manipulated me. She said she'd fix everything, mister. Carter stepped between them. Young man, he said, voice heavy. You are weak, but you are not beyond saving. Then he turned to Victoria. But you, there is no saving, Victoria thrashed against security, shouting, you old fool. You think she'll give you love? You think she'll give you love? You think Michael will go back to that woman who raised him in a sewing shop? He wants me. Ugh, he chose me. Michael collapsed to his knees. No, he whispered. No, I didn't. I didn't choose you. I destroyed myself for you, Victoria screamed, but her voice was drowned out by police sirens growing louder outside. You. Emily sobbed into her grandfather's arms, and Michael, my son, covered his face, shaking as the world he'd built on lies shattered around him. Okay. I stepped forward quietly, placing my hand on his shoulder. He didn't look up, but he whispered broken, You Mom. I'm so sorry. Tears filled my eyes, but I didn't let them fall, Michael. I settled. Bon? Michael, I said softly, this isn't over. Not yet, because the next part, the hardest part, was still to come. Police escorted Victoria out of the ballroom in handcuffs. Yuka. Her heel scraped across the marble like a defeated animal being dragged away. Guests watched in stunned silence. Phones recording, whispers rising, reputations shattering in real time. Michael didn't move. He stayed on his knees, shoulders shaking, hands covering his face. Cornec, the same hands I once held when he took his first steps, now trembling from the weight of choices he couldn't undo. Michael, I said softly. He didn't look up. Hey, Emily cried in her grandfather's arms across the room. Her wedding gown, white, perfect, expensive, now looked like a cruel costume, mister. Carter turned to me, Maria. I believe your son needs you now more than anyone. I should have felt vindicated. For months, Victoria had pushed me out. Michael had chosen their world over mine. I should have felt triumphant. It can't. But watching my son crumble, I felt only one thing. Pain. Deep, heavy, mother-shaped pain. I knelt beside him. When he finally lifted his face, his eyes were red, raw, lost, Mom, he whispered. I ruined everything. I didn't know how to stop it. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Michael, you let her control you. You let her turn you into someone you're not. He squeezed his eyes shut. She made me feel important. She made me feel like I mattered, like I could be more than just the kid from the sewing shop. Those words. They pierced deeper than any bullet. He wasn't rejecting me. He was rejecting the life he thought wasn't enough. Kink, Michael, I said gently. I never wanted you to feel small. I wanted you to feel proud. I worked so hard so you never had to feel less than anyone. I know, he sobbed. I know you did. But Victoria, she kept telling me I deserve better, that you held me back, that love wasn't enough. Kim, I touched his cheek. Love is always enough. But greed isn't, ego isn't. And Victoria knew exactly how to exploit your insecurities. He nodded, crying harder now. Across the room, officers read Victoria her rights as she screamed about betrayal. Money and lies. The glamour was gone. She looked hollow, twisted, defeated. A woman who built her life on manipulation, now left with nothing but consequences. Emily pulled away from her grandfather and stepped toward us. Her voice cracked. Michael, you were going to let her hurt me? Michael shook his head violently. No, Emily, I swear. I never wanted anything to happen to you. I thought she was bluffing. I thought it was just talk. Emily's eyes filled with grief so deep it felt like drowning. Talk? She whispered. You were planning a life with the woman who destroyed mine. Michael reached for her, but she stepped back. I don't know who you are anymore, she said. And I don't think you do either. And then she turned, not to Michael, not to the crowd, but to me. Oh, thank you, Maria, she whispered, tears slipping down her cheeks, for saving my life. And then she walked away. Michael collapsed again, broken, and I knew, Forgiving him would be harder than confronting the truth. But the hardest part was still ahead. Letting him face the consequences without saving him. This time, the ballroom slowly emptied, leaving behind shattered flowers, overturned chairs, and the echo of a celebration that had never been real. Police cars flashed red and blue outside the venue, like warning lights for a life spiraling out of control. Michael sat on the floor beside me, hollow-eyed, exhausted, destroyed in ways he couldn't yet understand. He wasn't handcuffed, he wasn't arrested, but he was not free. Not from guilt, not from shame. Not from the truth, Mom, he whispered, voice barely there. Please, don't leave me. That sentence, the same boy who once pushed me out of his life, now begging me not to walk away. I exhaled slowly, Michael. I love you, but love doesn't erase consequences. He bowed his head. I know, he said, but I don't know how to live with what I've done. I was betrayed. I brushed his hair gently, like I used to when he had nightmares. You live it with it to Toftor forced. You live with it by facing it, I said quietly. Not hiding, not running, not letting anyone else tell you who to be. He closed his eyes. I'm scared, Mom, I know, I whispered. So was I when you told me not to come today. His face crumpled. I'm sorry, he sobbed. For everything. For choosing her. For choosing them. For believing I had to become someone else just to be worthy, Michael. Kiana. My voice broke despite my strength. You were always worthy. You just stopped believing it. He leaned into me, not as a grown man, but as the child I once carried. But I knew what I had to do next. I stood up. He reached for my hand. Mom? Where are you going? To let you stand on your own, I said softly, his face twisted in panic. Please don't leave me alone. You're not alone, I said. You have a chance to rebuild, to make amends, to become someone you can respect, but I can't do that for you. He swallowed hard. Will you forgive me? Forgiveness isn't a gift, I said. It's a journey, and we're not at the end of it yet. He nodded slowly, defeated but understanding. I helped him to his feet. Go with Mr. Carter, I told him. Face what you've done. Cooperate with the investigation. Be honest. Do better. Will you visit me? He asked, voice trembling. When you start becoming the man I raised you to be, I replied gently. Kate. He didn't argue. He didn't beg. He simply nodded, tears falling silently as he walked toward Mr. Carter. I watched him go, not as a failure, not as a monster, but as a boy who had lost his way and would have to crawl through his own darkness to find light again. Outside, the sky had shifted into soft gold. Morning would come soon. I walked back to my little sewing shop. My hands were tired, my heart bruised, but my spirit stood tall because I had learned something powerful. A mother can love her child deeply, but still refuse to save him from himself. And sometimes, the greatest act of love is letting the truth do what comfort cannot.